Hi, my name is Caitlin, and I'm going to teach you how to bind a 3-hole pamphlet stitch book. These books are very easy to make once you learn how to do it, and they're great to make notebooks, sketchbooks, scrapbooks, pretty much anything. And I'm just going to take you through the supplies first before I actually start showing you how to do it. So the first thing we have is an awl. It looks like this. It's got a pointy end on one end, and the rest is wood or plastic to grab it by while you are punching the holes for your book. So it's called 3-hole pamphlet stitch. There will be 3 holes, and this is what you will be using to actually punch the holes. The next thing I have is a bone folder, just like this. It's wood. This one's wood. Sometimes they're made of plastic. It's got a flat edge, and this is used to get a nice crisp fold on your paper. So you'll run this along the edge so that they're nice and crisp and all fit together nicely. You don't have to use one of these. I like to. You can also use your fingernail or any other object that's gonna really push the paper down. The next thing I have here is a needle, which we'll be using to go through the holes once you punch them. And you can see it has a pretty big area at the top for the thread to go through, which will be helpful because the thread that we use is pretty thick, if you can see it, which is going to help make sure that the book's very secure and isn't flimsy or falling apart. So this is the thread. I also have a measuring tape here, which I'm going to use to measure my stations, some scissors for the thread, and a pencil to label. And then lastly, of course, I have the inside paper, which I got from Church Paper, and I have a cover page, which is a little bit thicker. One more thing I forgot to show was binder clips, which just regular binder clips, and I'm going to use those to make sure that my book block, which is the pages inside the book, stay together while I'm sewing and don't get off from each other. So the first thing I'm going to do now that I have all of my supplies is I'm going to fold my pages. So these are the pages that are going to be inside the book, excluding the cover, which I will get to in a second. And I'm going to do this using my bone folder. So I wouldn't recommend too many pages at once because then you won't really get that crisp fold, but you can do 1 or 2 at a time just to save some time. So you're just going to fold it, and then you're going to take this, you're just going to go just like this along the edge. And that will get you a nice, thin, crisp fold. And you can go over it a few times if you need to, just to get that really nice fold. So then I'm going to continue that with the rest of my pages. Folding it, and then going over that edge until it's nice and crisp. I'm going to do it one more time for my last couple pages. So these are my pages, so that I'm going to put them all together, all just nesting inside of each other. And this is going to make up my book block, which is the inside pages. So just before I do that, I'm going to run over the edge all together one more time, just so they're all really nice and ready to fit inside the cover. So once I have that, I can take my cover and just do the same thing. This will prevent any of that sort of wrinkling or creasing of the paper that you sometimes get if you just fold it without one. So now I have a really nice, clean looking cover. And then I can put my pages inside of there. So from here, I'm going to open up my book to the middle. I'm going to take my binder clips, and I'm just going to clip one at the top here and one at the bottom over here. This is just to keep everything together so that when I'm measuring and sewing, nothing gets off from each other and the pages aren't sticking out the top and the bottom. Since I know my paper is 8.5 by 11, my first mark will be at 4¼ inches. So I'll take my measuring tape and I will measure to 4¼ and I'll put my first mark there. And this is going to be station number 2. So the 3 holes that we punch are going to be called stations, so that's what I'll refer to them as. And this is station 2 since it's in the middle. And so then from there, there's going to be 2 more stations that you have to make. So from here, you're going to go up a little bit. And I typically like to just go 1 inch down from the end. And that's going to be station 1. And then I'll do that again. From the bottom, go 1 inch up. And that will be station 3. So from here, we're actually going to take our awl and we're going to punch our 3 stations. So to do that, you're just going to go and you're going to slightly fold your book so you know you're getting it right on the seam. And you're just going to stab through the book block and the cover right where you marked the station. And with a nice sharp awl, this should not be hard at all. This shouldn't be difficult. It'll just go right through like that. We'll take that out. And then you'll repeat that 2 more times for your other 2 stations. This will be a little more difficult if you have a larger book block, but just make sure you're folding it as you do it so it gets right on that seam. And then 1 more time. And those are your 3 stations. And you can see this is what they look like from the outside. The next step is going to be to take your thread and you're going to measure about 2 to 3 lengths of your book block. That's how much thread you want to use. So I'm going to cut it there, and this makes sure that you have enough excess at the end to tie it off. So some people like to actually wax their thread, which makes the thread a little bit more rigid, which can be easier for some people to get it through. I'm not going to do that, but you can get wax and you just kind of pull your thread through it and that'll kind of stiffen it up. But I'm just going to take my needle and I'm going to thread this through there. This step can take some time. But that wasn't too hard. So I'm just gonna put it through, leave a little bit off. I'm not gonna tie it or anything, I'm just gonna leave it like this. And then we're ready to begin sewing. So we're gonna start by going out station 2. So you're gonna start from the inside of the book, go to station 2, and push your needle through that station to the outside. And so when you do this, you wanna leave about 2.5 inches or so inside the book, and this is going to be used at the end to tie off the binding. So now that you went through station 2, you're going to go up to station 1, and you're going to go through that station, pull it back to the inside of the book, and you're going to make sure this is nice and tight without pulling this through the station. So just hold on to this and just kind of tug them until it feels tight. Then you're going to take your needle and you're going to go skip station 2 and go down to station 3. And you're going to go out station 3, just like you did before. And you're going to pull that tight again. Well, it's helpful to hold onto this one though, just so it doesn't get pulled through the station, because then you'll have to restart the binding. So once you went out through station 3, you're going to go back in to station 2. So what I usually like to do when I go back in here is put my thread on the other side of this binding and pull it tight. And then when I tie it off, I'm going to tie it onto this thread. So now that that's all complete, I'm ready to tie it off. So I'm just going to do a nice little double knot. And then I can cut off the excess as short as I want. And I can unclip these. And close up my book. And maybe just run this over one more time. And this is what it should look like from the outside. And then on the inside, if you flip to any page that's not the middle, you'll see it's nice and clean. You can't even see the binding at all. And if you flip to the middle page, you'll see our little numbered stations and our little binding with the tie off. And then you can go back in and erase those stations you numbered. And then this book is ready to use. One last thing I do sometimes is, the pages, just since they're all nested together, they kind of stick out the edge a little bit. So one thing that can help is either getting a bigger cover paper so it kind of overhangs that, or you can just trim it off with an X-Acto knife at the very end. So I'm just going to bring that right over here and just trim off that excess. Sometimes it takes a few times to get through all the layers, especially if you have a larger book block. So it's all nice and straight on the edge. And I'll just take any off that are still stuck in there. And that's that. Just to show an example of what you can do with a book like that, this is one that I bound with watercolor paper as the cover. And you can make a journal. And you can see on this one that I made the pages quite a bit shorter than the cover, just so that they would be in there. And here's another example I made, which I made this one to practice French twists. Just a very short, small book, but that's a 3-hole binding. And since this method is a no adhesive bookbinding method, when I'm putting things onto the cover, I also like to use no adhesives. So for this cover, I just cut up other pieces of paper, painted them with watercolor, and then I sewed them into the front. So the front will look like a little bit messy, You can always put something over that if you want, but just to keep it consistent with the no adhesive binding method, I like to use no adhesives on my cover either. So that was my tutorial for the 3-hole pamphlet stitch method. Here's my finished book, and I hope that was helpful.